An alien bride was delivered to my doorstep by mistake. Human. I'm not leaving until you claim me. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The delivery manifests at apartment 7B. I live in apartment 7B. I had not ordered anything that required a formal escort, ceremonial documentation in 3 languages, and a woman who looked at me like I was supposed to know what to do next. Let me back up. My name is Soren Vale. I am 30 years old, a systems architect for the Salem Station Infrastructure Authority, and I have what I consider a very organized life. I wake at the same time, I eat at predictable intervals, I solve complex infrastructure problems with methodical precision, and I do not, as a general principle, open my door at 0800 on a Thursday to find a Quillari woman in formal ceremonial attire flanked by 2 officials holding a document that has my apartment number on it. But that is exactly what I found. She was extraordinary. I am stating this as a factual observation rather than an emotional response, because the situation required factual observation before it required anything else. She was Quillari, pale silver gold luminescent skin, large amber eyes, silver white hair arranged in the formal structure that the cultural briefings I had read described as the Quillari ceremonial bond arrangement, which was specific to one specific kind of ceremony. She was wearing deep ivory formal attire with geometric gold detailing that I recognized, again from cultural briefings, as bonding ceremony attire. She was standing with the controlled posture of someone who had been trained to maintain composure in significant situations and was doing so, though her amber eyes were doing something complicated. The official on the left said, in formal Quillari, that my translation module processed in real time, we deliver the bonding candidate Era Soreth to the registered address of her designated partner, as processed through the Quillari Traditional Union Registry, Salem Station Office, reference number. He read a long number that I did not process because I was still at the beginning of the sentence. I think, I said carefully, there has been a mistake. The official on the left looked at the manifest. The official on the right looked at the manifest. The woman, Era Soreth, looked at me with those complicated amber eyes and said nothing. My apartment is 7B, I said. But I did not register with the Quillari Traditional Union Registry. The official on the left said, the registration was filed under the resident of apartment 7B, Salem Station Ring 7, with an accompanying documentation package that cleared through the standard verification process. The registration is valid. Someone else filed it, I said. The filing was accepted, the official said. Under your residential address. That is not the same thing as me filing it, I said. The official looked at the manifest with the expression of someone whose process had been followed correctly and who was now encountering an objection that the process had no designated space for. The registry has been completed, he said. The bonding candidate has been delivered. Our function is fulfilled. He folded the manifest. Any disputes regarding the registration must be filed through the standard registry dispute process, which has a processing window of 14 to 21 standard days. They left. I stood in my doorway and looked at Era Soreth in her bonding ceremony attire, and she stood in my doorway and looked at me with those complicated amber eyes, and the corridor was very quiet. I apologize, I said. I genuinely did not register with the Union Registry. There has been an administrative error and I am going to resolve it. I know, she said. I stared at her. You know? I have known for 3 days that the registration was fraudulent, she said. Her Terran standard was flawless. Not translated quality, genuinely flawless, the kind that came from years of serious study. My family filed the registration without my knowledge or consent, using information they obtained from the registry's public residential database. They selected a non-Quillari address because the Quillari Traditional Union Registry's dispute process has a 14 to 21 day window, and during that window the bonding candidate is legally required to remain at the designated address. She paused. My family believes that 21 days at a designated address is sufficient time to produce a genuine attachment. They have specific ideas about what is appropriate for my future that I do not share. I processed this. Your family fraudulently registered you to a stranger's address, I said, to force a 21-day proximity situation. Yes, she said. And you are at my door anyway, I said. The alternative was refusing the delivery escort, she said, which would have produced a registry violation on my record that would have followed me professionally for 7 years. The Quillari Research Institute, where I am employed, has a standard conduct clause. She held my gaze with those amber eyes. I chose the lesser complication. I am the lesser complication, I said. Compared to a 7-year professional conduct notation, she said, yes. I stood with this for a moment. Then I said the thing that seemed most relevant. Come inside. I will file the dispute immediately and we can discuss the timeline. She came inside. She sat at my kitchen table with the controlled composure of someone who had been maintaining controlled composure through an escalating series of events for 3 days and was continuing to do so because the alternative was losing the composure, which she had clearly decided she was not going to do. I got my workstation, accessed the Quilari Traditional Union Registry's dispute portal, and began the dispute filing with the methodical precision that complex bureaucratic problems required. The portal's dispute form had 47 fields. I filled all 47 fields. The portal's confirmation page informed me that my dispute had been received and would be reviewed within 14 to 21 standard days, and that during the review period all parties to the registration were required to maintain the registered residential arrangement pending the outcome. I stared at the confirmation page. The dispute process, I said, requires the arrangement to continue during the review. Yes, Era said. I am aware. Your family knew this, I said. They planned for it, she said. The dispute process is part of the design. File the dispute, trigger the mandatory continuation, extend the timeline. She looked at the confirmation page. They are not unintelligent people. They are simply operating on a set of values I do not share, using mechanisms the system provides. I thought about the situation. A fraudulent registry filing, a mandatory continuation clause, a 21-day review window, and an extremely composed Quilari researcher sitting at my kitchen table who had chosen this over a 7-year professional conduct notation. You are a researcher, I said. Atmospheric xenobiology, she said. I am attached to the Quilari Research Institute's Selam Station division. I have been on the station for 8 months. 8 months in Ring 7, I said. I work in infrastructure. I did the atmospheric filtration assessment for Ring 7's residential environmental systems 4 months ago. She looked at me with those amber eyes. You did the atmospheric filtration assessment, she said. The Ring 7 residential population includes 14 Quilari residents, I said. The atmospheric calibration required specific parameters for Quilari respiratory comfort. I noticed the calibration change 4 months ago, she said. The Ring 7 atmosphere improved significantly. I filed a commendation through the Residential Services portal. I received it, I said. The commendation was anonymous. I did not want to seem, she paused. Quilari researchers at a Terran station sometimes find that expressions of appreciation are received differently than intended. I chose anonymous to avoid the complication. I looked at this woman who had filed an anonymous commendation 4 months ago for a calibration change I had made, who was now sitting at my kitchen table because her family had filed a fraudulent registry entry using my address, who had known for 3 days that the registration was fraudulent and had come anyway because 7 years was worse than 21 days, who was an atmospheric xenobiologist who had noticed a respiratory calibration change that most residents did not consciously register at all. I need to tell you something, I said. Yes, she said. Resolving the registry dispute will take 14 to 21 days regardless of what we do, I said. During that time you are legally required to remain at this registered address, which is my apartment. My apartment has a second room. I use it as a workspace, but it has a functional sleep surface and privacy access. It is available for however long the review takes. You are offering to share your apartment with someone you met 40 minutes ago, she said. I am offering to share my apartment with someone who is in a bureaucratic situation that has a specific resolution timeline, I said. The situation is not your fault. The timeline is fixed. Making the timeline more difficult than it needs to be would serve no useful purpose. She looked at me for a long time. The amber eyes were not doing the complicated thing anymore, they had moved to something clearer and more direct. You calibrated the Ring 7 atmosphere for Quilari respiratory comfort, she said. It was part of the assessment requirements, I said. You filled 47 fields in the dispute portal, she said. The fields were relevant to the case, I said. You offered the second room without conditions, she said. The conditions would have been irrelevant, I said. The situation is what it is. Responding to what a situation actually is rather than what it could be exploited for is just how I approach things. She was quiet for a moment. My family selected your address because the registry's public database showed your apartment as a single resident unit with no active partnership registration, she said. They wanted a scenario where proximity was the primary variable. She paused. They did not research who lived at the address beyond the residential classification. They should have done more research, I said. Yes, she said. They should have. Something moved in her expression. The first thing that was not composure or assessment, something that was adjacent to the dry humor of someone who had found an unexpected detail in a situation that had been designed to constrain her. What would the additional research have told them? That the person at 7B does infrastructure assessments methodically, fills 47 field forms completely, calibrates atmospheric systems for all resident species, and is very difficult to manipulate through proximity alone, I said, because proximity is only meaningful when it produces something genuine, and manufactured proximity is just a logistical fact rather than an emotional variable. Era Sorath, atmospheric xenobiologist, Quillari Research Institute, Selam Station Division, who had filed an anonymous commendation 4 months ago and had been delivered to my doorstep by a fraudulent registry entry this morning, looked at me across my kitchen table with those amber eyes that had come a long way from complicated. "You are a very unusual person," she said. "I have been told that," I said. "Usually by people who expected a different response to a situation." "What would the expected response have been?" she said. "Alarm," I said. "Possibly. Or the opposite, the kind of opportunism the situation could theoretically enable." I looked at the dispute confirmation on my workstation screen. Both seemed like incorrect responses to what the situation actually was. "Which is," she said. "A researcher in a bureaucratic complication that has a fixed timeline," I said. "Who needs a functional place to work and sleep for 21 days maximum and has done nothing to deserve either the complication or any additional ones." She was quiet for a moment. The station's standard ambient sound filled the apartment. The ventilation system cycling, the corridor ambient, the specific quality of a residential unit in the mid-morning of a working day. The atmospheric calibration in Ring 7 was, I knew from the assessment I had done 4 months ago, running within the parameters most comfortable for all 14 Quillari residents, which was a number that now included the person sitting at my kitchen table. She had noticed the change and filed a commendation, and I had received it without knowing who sent it. "The atmospheric xenobiology research," I said. "What specifically?" She looked at me. "The interaction between Selam Station's atmospheric filtration systems and the Quillari bioluminescent response chemistry," she said. "The filtration particulate composition affects the quality of bioluminescent expression in ways that have implications for Quillari health markers that are currently not part of the station's environmental health monitoring. The Ring 7 filtration uses a standard Terran baseline particulate composition with species-specific respiratory adjustments," I said. "It does not account for bioluminescent chemistry." "No," she said. "It does not." "If I had the atmospheric chemistry data from the Ring 7 population," I said, "I could model whether a filtration adjustment was technically feasible within the current system's parameters." She looked at me. "I have 8 months of atmospheric chemistry data from the Ring 7 Quillari resident population," she said. "It was collected as part of the background data for the research. I have not had access to the infrastructure system parameters to assess the feasibility of a filtration adjustment." I looked at the workstation. She looked at the workstation. "I have access to the infrastructure parameters," I said. "I have the chemistry data," she said. "Between those two things," I said. "Between those two things," she confirmed. "We worked for 4 hours. Not because there was nothing else to discuss or because working was a way to avoid discussing something else, but because the data was there and the parameters were there and the intersection of them produced exactly what ERA had suspected it would produce, which was a feasible filtration adjustment that would improve the bioluminescent chemistry environment for all 14 Quillari residents on Ring 7, with projected health marker improvements that were significant enough to warrant a formal infrastructure proposal." At 1,400 hours she looked at the completed analysis and said, "This will take a formal proposal through the Infrastructure Authority." "I know the Infrastructure Authority," I said. "You work for the Infrastructure Authority," she said. "I am, technically, the person who files Ring 7 infrastructure proposals," I said. Something happened in her expression that was not composure and not assessment and not the dry humor of the unexpected detail. It was something warmer and more direct than any of the things her expression had done since 0800. And it was, I thought, the expression of someone who had been delivered to the wrong doorstep and was beginning to consider whether the wrong doorstep was, in a specific technical sense, also the right one. "The dispute review," she said. 14 to 21 days. "Yes," I said. "The proposal process," she said. "For a Ring 7 infrastructure adjustment. 2 to 3 weeks, I said. "For a proposal of this scope." "The timelines overlap," she said. "They do," I said. "That is," she said carefully, "a coincidence." "It is," I said. "The situation is what it is." She looked at me. I looked at her. The atmospheric filtration system ran its standard cycle in the background, particulate composition calibrated for all resident species, bioluminescent chemistry not yet accounted for but about to be. My family, she said, will be very confused by the outcome of the situation they designed. They should have done more research, I said. Yes, she said. They should have. She looked at the analysis on my workstation, 8 months of her data and my parameters producing something neither of them had produced alone. Soren. Yes, I said. The second room, she said. You mentioned it has privacy access. It does, I said. And the workspace configuration is functional, she said. I use it daily, I said. It functions well. She stood up from the kitchen table with the composed precision she had brought to everything since 0800, and she said, I am going to retrieve my research equipment from the transit storage where I left it when the escort arrived this morning. I will be back within 2 hours. She paused at the kitchen doorway. When I return, I would like to continue the filtration analysis. There are 3 additional parameters I did not have access to before today that I believe will substantially strengthen the proposal. I will have them ready, I said. She left. I sat at my kitchen table in the apartment that had been a single resident unit this morning and was now something else, and I looked at the dispute confirmation and the analysis and the 47 completed fields, and I thought about anonymous commendations and atmospheric calibration and 14 Quillari residents and the specific quality of a situation that was what it was and nothing more and nothing less. She came back in 93 minutes. I had the 3 additional parameters ready. We worked until 2,100 hours, when the proposal was complete and the analysis was thorough and the Ring 7 atmosphere was about to become measurably better for everyone who lived in it. The dispute review concluded on day 17. The fraudulent registration was invalidated. The mandatory arrangement formally ended. Era Soreth was no longer legally required to remain at apartment 7B. She stayed anyway. Not because of the registry or the mandatory arrangement or anything her family had designed into the situation. Because the research was ongoing and the infrastructure parameters were accessible and the atmospheric filtration improvement required monitoring data that her research could provide and that the proposal required she coordinate with the infrastructure specialist responsible for Ring 7. Because the situation was what it was. And what it was, by day 17, was something her family had not designed and the registry had not required and the 47-field dispute form had not produced, which was 2 people who had found, in the overlap of 2 specific bodies of knowledge and 1 manufactured crisis, something that manufactured crises were not designed to produce but occasionally did anyway, when both parties were the kind of people who responded to what situations actually were rather than what they could be. Exploited for. Her family remained confused. Soren found this appropriate.